My name is Gavin Evans, and this is my review of Free Guy. And this movie is getting amazing reviews, and I have to say that I'm on completely the opposite side of them. I do not get the love for this movie. This is one of the worst movies of 2021 so far. There is a moment in the movie where the movie starts to question life and consciousness and what it means to be alive. And that stuff was really great. And it's only in the movie for about 5 minutes. It doesn't dive deep into it. It's introduced, then forgotten almost immediately. Ryan Reynolds does have some charisma in this movie, and he does keep it entertaining, but if I'm being honest, I'm getting tired of the whole Ryan Reynolds shtick. I think the guy seems like a genuinely good guy. He's entertaining to watch, but he's almost the exact same person in all of his movies. So while I was watching this movie, I didn't see Guy, I just saw Ryan Reynolds, and that to me is no good. I would have much preferred some kind of unique casting. Like, Zachary Levi would have been excellent in this role. Or if they got someone unique, like Colin Farrell or Sam Rockwell, or someone that would give this movie a unique identity, because by the end of it, it just feels like another Ryan Reynolds movie. And I do like him as an actor. He's great in movies like Adventureland and Buried and The Voices and The Proposal, but I've just gotten tired of him in the past few years, and he's still entertaining to watch, but he doesn't really add that much to the movie. The rest of the cast is fine. I don't think there's any great performances here. They show up on set, they do their jobs, they don't really add anything to the characters. That's it. Most of the performances are just mediocre, except for Taika Waititi, who I genuinely love as an actor. Like, I thought he was hilarious in Jojo Rabbit, but he's actively terrible in this movie. I don't get what they were going for with his character, but he just not good. And lots of people are going to see this movie because it's getting classified as a comedy, and I'm not exaggerating when I say this, but I didn't laugh once. This movie was not funny whatsoever to me. There's an eventual point where there's so many jokes and so much going on that you just become numb to it after a while, and every single joke I found to be predictable. I predicted so many of the jokes before they happened. Like, someone would say something, and I'm like, oh, well, the obvious joke would be if this person says this in return, and sure enough, that person did. And it actually becomes really predictable. And there's a few terrible left-leaning jokes that I just thought were cringy as hell. Like, anytime someone brings up white privilege or some obvious gun control joke, it's just like, ugh, this is so heavy-handed and embarrassing to even watch. And the cringe doesn't stop there. There's a few moments where we get a montage of a bunch of different YouTubers and streamers, and I thought that stuff was really embarrassing. And then, yeah, I guess I'll get into it. The last act of this movie, there was a moment, and I thought that this moment was the cringiest thing ever. As soon as it happened, everyone in the theater loved it. Like, people started clapping and cheering, like, oh, I know that property. I just sunk down into my seat like, oh my goodness, this is so bad. And yeah, I'll say this. I didn't see Space Jam 2 because it looked absolutely awful, and it looked like they just used every single IP they had for the sake of it. And lots of people criticized it for that. Where's the criticism for this Disney-owned movie? That's all I'll say, but I think it's lazy. I think it's awful for the future of movies. And I think it's very formulaic, and I hated it. I hated the last act of this movie, especially that one moment. It was very cringy. To go back to all the YouTubers and streamers that I was talking about, not only was that stuff cringy, but like there were moments where people were talking about how hot the video game character is. And it just, oh my goodness, like, the guy is a video game character. Like, that's so weird. Like, no, that's wrong. And then they made a huge deal, like, oh my goodness, all these different streamers are streaming this game. This story's going nationwide. Everyone obsessed with this guy who's just living his life in the video game. And the truth is that no one in the real world would care. Like, we see all these people watching him in Times Square and just everywhere in the world. I'm just like, no way. People would not care. There's no way that many people would watch this guy. And that did take me out of it. And let's talk about pacing and structure, because this movie has neither. The pacing and structure in this movie is non-existent. There's no single first act, second act, third act. There's a clear third act, but everything up until that point, it's just like, where is this going? Like, what's the end goal? and it just feels so made up on the spot, and you can feel that. It's just like, oh, so now they're doing this, and then this, and this. Like, what's the end goal here? And there's not a clear structure to this movie, and it feels very disjointed. It jumps from the video game world to the real world to all these different characters, and it's just all over the place, and it's very disjointed, it's very messy, and the pacing in this movie is awful. It's so fast paced, there's always so much going on, and the movie doesn't take any time to breathe, just let it happen. The one time it does is that 5 minute section that I really liked. And aside from that, I just found this movie to be a pacing nightmare. I thought for sure this movie was 2.5 hours long, because that's what it felt like to me. And then the movie started at 9:30 last night, and by the time it was done, it was 11:23, and I'm just like, wait. Like, I honestly didn't believe that this movie was less than 2 hours, that this movie was like an hour and 45 minutes. I was just like, there's no way that's accurate. No way. But yeah, this movie is less than 2 hours, and it honestly feels like 2.5 hours long. It is a complete mess in that way, and I did find it to be boring. It overstayed its welcome. When you have so much going on in every single moment of the movie, you just grow numb to it after a while, and it just becomes insufferable to sit through. And the story to this movie is just awful. Like, yes, there's that area of this NPC who gains consciousness, and I like that aspect of the movie, but so little of it's on that, and it becomes this entirely different thing about evil video game companies screwing over some indie developers, and that whole aspect of the story I just found to be awful. Like, everything involving the humans just didn't work for me whatsoever, and there was one character played by Utkarsh Ambudkar. I apologize for mispronouncing his name. His character was absolutely terribly written. He is introduced to be one way, and then the way he ends up in the movie just didn't feel true to that character. I thought he was really poorly developed and just awfully written. And there's a romance between... Well, there's two different romances, and they're both terrible, and you don't buy them for a single second. Okay, and you know what? I'm not going to go into full-on spoilers. If you haven't seen the movie, this won't be a spoiler. But if you have seen it, you'll know exactly what I mean, okay? So they clearly set up the fact that there is not a button on the controller to kiss someone. You cannot play this game and press X and you kiss someone. They set that up. But so much of the last act of the movie is completely dependent on the fact that someone was able to press X to make out with someone. I know that sounds really weird if you haven't seen the movie, but if you've seen it, you'll know what I mean. But it is the biggest plot hole that completely destroys the last act of the movie on logic alone, because it's just not there. Oh, I hated this movie! Another problem I had with this movie is that while I was watching it, some of the musical beats, I'm just like, okay, I've definitely heard this music before, and it was driving me crazy the entire movie. I'm like, where have I heard it? And then right before the end of the movie, it hit me. There's a 2012 Disney short film called Paperman. It's a really good, really charming little short film. And the musical score by Christoph Beck is great in it. And I realized that they reused that score for this movie. So the score in this movie isn't even original, because it pulls entirely from a lesser seen Disney short film. It's a good music, but it just took me out of the movie. And I don't know, okay, maybe I'm looking way into it, but there's a 2010 movie starring Emma Stone, Jeff Daniels, and Ryan Reynolds called Paperman. And I'm just wondering, is there some kind of connective tissue to it? Did Ryan Reynolds just watch that short film and he's just like, I like the music, and I was in a short film called Paperman. Let's put this music in it. Maybe some people will get it. Maybe I'm the one and only person who made that connection. Maybe. And you know, in movies like this, it's the little things that count. It's the extra things that immerse you into this world. And there just isn't that. The people in the game don't feel like players walking a control. They walk like normal people. They do everything like normal people. Like, if it was detailed enough to the point where, like, you know, they'll try and, you know, there's a... like the controller is stuck and they can't move a certain way or they can't look a certain way. There's so much you could have done with this premise, but the movie just keeps it surface level. It doesn't do any of that, and because of that, the world didn't really feel alive. It just felt like a CGI heavy world that didn't even feel like a video game to me. It felt like there was chaos and all this different stuff happening, but it doesn't actually feel like a video game to me. I just think this movie failed in absolutely every way. Like I said, there's about 5 or 10 good minutes of the movie. Ryan Reynolds is Ryan Reynolds. He's entertaining enough, but this movie could have been elevated by a different performer who could have given this movie a unique feel. It is not funny at all. The logic just isn't existent. The story is awful. The movie is cringy in so many moments. The last act of this movie is so bad. The cameos didn't work for me whatsoever. This movie was just awful in every single way. I absolutely hated it. I'm gonna go ahead and give Free Guy a 2.5 out of 10. I went to the theater asking for one free guy, looking for a servant who I didn't have to pay, but they just gave me a ticket to this movie instead, so I just decided to see it. And for a movie called Free Guy, I actually had to pay for it, so what the hell. But anyways, did you watch Free Guy? Let me know what you thought about it in the comments down below. Make sure you like, make sure you comment, make sure you subscribe. Stay tuned for some more videos soon. Gavin out.